A few days ago, Jaylen Brown was traded for a 36-year-old Paul George, two first-round picks, and some second-round picks. Many of the analytics people in the NBA have been saying that he isn't even an all-star level talent, while many NBA fans have been recognizing him as one of the best players in the NBA for years. Let's take a look and see what is leading to these polarizing opinions on Jaylen Brown, his game, but also his trade value. Coming into the NBA as a freshman out of Cal, people knew that Jaylen Brown had talent. The physical tools were there. He was a big body at Cal and showed some flashes of some shot making and finishing around the basket. This led him to being picked third overall in the 2016 NBA draft. He averaged 6.6 points in his rookie season, up to 14 in his second, 13 in the next one, but after that has been a 20 plus point per game scorer for every season in his career. He's made 5 out of the last 6 All-Star games, finished in the top 6 in MVP voting this past year, and has made All-NBA second team twice in his career. Even with all of these accolades, Bobby Marks mentioned on Twitter the other day that an NBA executive or an NBA analytics person said that they view Jaylen Brown as the 7th most impactful player on the Boston Celtics. It's very hard to believe how this is possible with someone who's averaging near 29 points per game. So let's look into the same analytics that these departments are using to evaluate Jaylen Brown, see if these numbers have any validity, and if they do, what are they missing? Because a 29 point per game scorer is not going to be the 7th most impactful player on a team. So the stat that these analysts are really talking about with Jaylen Brown and regarding him as the 7th most impactful player on the Boston Celtics is net on off. This takes the offensive rating of when the player is on the court, subtracts the defensive rating, meaning a big margin is good, and compares it to what that rating is when the player is off the floor. So if a player had a net rating of +5 when they were on the court, this would often be seen as good as they're winning those minutes. But if when they're on the bench, the team has a +10 net margin, it in theory is saying that the team is better with him on the bench than on the court. And this has been the statistic that has been most talked about with Jaylen Brown. But the thing with it is that it is very much an indicator and not a measure of anything. On-off data can be very prone to small sample sizes with certain people on the court and on the bench. And the bigger issue with it is that it's very role dependent. So if you're comparing two stars to one another, it can tell some good information. But when you're comparing someone who has a very different role in the offense and defense, like Jaylen Brown, compared to somebody who's more focused on the defensive end and catch and shooting shots, the numbers can be slightly skewed. It can also be very dependent on who the players are playing against. If somebody's going up against the top talent on another team, and then you have someone with a small sample size and is going up against bench units, these numbers may show very different stories than what is actually happening in reality. And when I say that, talking about their impact. And there's a really good article by Tim Cato from DNVR who talks about the most trendiest stat in sports, which is this net off on off number and why it's often misused. So I recommend you all to read that. I'll leave it in the description. The website Databaller has a really cool feature where you can look at certain teams and different combinations of players and see which combinations with players on and off the court have the best impact on net rating. The examples I'm about to show you cover 3 seasons, the 2024, 2025, and then 2026 seasons for the Boston Celtics to get a bigger sample size, looking at lineups with Jaylen Brown on the court and Pritchard off. You can see that the Celtics have a net rating of 9.2 plus. With both of them on the court, they are worse with a rating of +7.1. With just Pritchard, the team is theoretically even better than with the two of them at 14.8. And when both are off the court, they have a rating of plus 11.9, which is even better than Jaylen Brown alone or Jaylen Brown with Peyton Pritchard. Very similar themes can be taken when looking at Jaylen Brown and Derek White's data. With both on the court, they have a net rating of plus 9.5. With just White, they're even better at 15.4. With both off, they're better than both of them on the court at 12.2. And with just Jaylen Brown alone, they're a measly plus 4.3 compared to any other number that we've seen so far. And then finally, looking at the co-star, Jason Tatum. When Jaylen Brown is on the court without Tatum, they're a plus 7.6. With both of them, they are marginally better at plus 8.9. With just Tatum, the offense is better than just Brown alone at 13.7. But the most interesting part about this entire experiment here is seeing that with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum off the court, they are plus 14.3. Better than Tatum alone, better than Brown alone, and better than Tatum and Brown together. And this says that the Boston Celtics are better without either of their stars on the basketball court over the past 3 seasons. And this is the exact issue with on-off data. It doesn't take into consideration the roles that Tatum and Brown have played on the Celtics the past number of years with the increased shot creation that they have to create for others. If these other players were not on the court, or if the other players were asked to start games instead of these guys, and were asked to create against the top defenders on other teams, it is unlikely that they would have anywhere near the impact that these two have on the team's overall efficiency. People like Peyton Pritchard over the past 3 years, when he won Sixth Man of the Year, was often going against bench units with weaker competition than who Jaylen Brown would have had to create against, which would often be the top defender on whatever team. But the net on-off numbers don't take that into consideration. They just know that when Jaylen Brown's on the court, the team is marginally better. But then when the other guys are on the court and Jaylen Brown's not on, likely meaning that the other team's stars are not on as well, the team is a lot better, which makes sense because the Boston Celtics have had an extremely deep team that wins games with their bench. So when the analysts and everybody are talking about these net on-off numbers, it's very important to understand the context of this and how they're an indicator of the impact that a player has on the game, but is not the full story whatsoever. And now this isn't going to be fully positive about Jaylen Brown as well. There are other indicators that may show his impact isn't as great as other stars. Regularized adjusted plus minus is one of the coolest all-in-one statistics because you can break it down into its components. It sees the game as a way that you can impact winning in 3 different major categories. In your team's efficiency on offense and defense, looking at true shooting percentage. In the turnover battle, being able to not turn the ball over on offense and force turnovers on the defensive end. And then also close out possessions on the defensive end, rebounding, and extend possessions offensively. And when looking at each of these metrics for Jaylen Brown over the past number of years, you can see that his impact on his team's offensive true shooting has been elite, over 90th percentile in most years as of recent. But where he doesn't show as strongly is in that possession game, the creating defensive turnovers, ending possessions on the defensive end, generating offensive rebounds, and not turning the ball over. When you look at his possession value, which basically takes into consideration those 4 possession metrics, he has ranked below the 10th percentile in 3 of the last 4 years with how he contributes to his team's amount of possessions they get per game. And although the offense is very efficient, this means that other teams will get more possessions net than the Celtics will when he is on the court, meaning that the other teams don't have to be as efficient to put up the same amount of points. So although when he's on the court, teams don't shoot that efficiently, it doesn't really matter in the impact part of the game because of the extra possessions that teams are getting. So although he is a very efficient creator shooting wise for this Boston Celtics team, these advanced statistics show that Jaylen Brown does not help out his team winning the possession battle, which is a big part of basketball. And this is also shown in counting stats if you want to look at these instead. If you look at turnovers per 100 possessions for the past year, he ranks fourth. And the other guys are Denny Avdia, Russell Westbrook, and then primary ball handlers and playmakers in Luka, Cade, and Jokic. And most of these guys are making much more advanced reads than Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is on the offensive end. Jokic is creating a lot of value for his teammates in these riskier passes that lead to turnovers. Same with Luka, same with Cade. But Jaylen Brown has just not been the same level of playmaker to warrant this high a level of turnovers. But like in all cases, the analytics do not tell the full story here. Jaylen Brown has taken strides in his shot creation ability. He's up to 5 assists per game, which even with the turnovers is not great. It shows that he's become willing to make the extra pass. And I don't think that the things he was having issues with this year, he will have to in Philadelphia. The team already has a primary ball dominant creator in Tyrese Maxey. They have a guy who looks a lot like Jaylen Brown coming into the league as an athletic wing who's willing to play hard defense and has shown some self-creation chops as well. And then you also have Joel Embiid when he is in the lineup, who is a focal point of that offense as well. So it's unlikely that Jaylen Brown will put up the same scoring output as he did this past season, but I think all those other things that he does so well, driving to the basket, defensive intensity when he has the energy to do it, spacing sometimes. In some seasons, he's been able to show that he is a solid three-point shooter in this league. And the mid-range has come along a lot in the past years as well. But with less of a need for him to be a primary ball handler or creator and allowing him to do more of that off-ball scoring because he's still going to be a high-level scorer, I think that this will help his on-off numbers and everything like that. But the analysts have been looking at him negatively for playing in a very different role this year than he ever played before. The point totals were only up a little bit, but the ways that he was getting these shots, instead of self-creating before, it was often he would be the outlet to something. He wouldn't be the one running the pick and roll. He'd be the one coming off a down screen to get the ball off a handoff. And this is all stuff that he'll be able to get back to with Philadelphia. I think that this is a great trade for the Philadelphia 76ers, and Jaylen Brown will show the NBA why he does deserve to be an all-star year in and year out, and that the analytics do not tell the full story, and he will not be the 7th most impactful player on the Philadelphia 76ers next year. Thank you for watching this new format of video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.